I was looking at the takeaways, PK, and the first takeaway for me is the government is being extremely forthright, direct, and wants to put the facts out on what the situation was in 2014 compared to now. I think the very significant takeaway for me is the announcement by the finance minister that she would like to present a white paper on the economic progress. So that serves as some kind of a substitute to all WhatsApp information that may be going on. So the government wants to place on record where things were and where things are. So I feel, rather than look at the fine-tuning of this, which is really an enumeration of the government schemes and intent, I thought that was significant. I'd like to take your one fundamental takeaway. PK.
Well, the glide path of fiscal responsibility is very clear. This year, it'll be 5.8% of GDP according to the government, lower than the budgeted estimate of 5.9. Next year is 5.1, and the following year 4.5. So really, from the point of view of markets and the economy, the reduction in the fiscal deficit over time helps to crowd in private investment. This is classic economics. The government reduces its borrowing requirement and allows the private sector to step in and invest more. I don't think there's going to be any real change to the strength of public investment by the government. Public investment continues, infrastructure is going to continue to be built rapidly, but the fiscal deficit comes down because direct tax revenues in particular, as well as GST, are continuing to grow at a very robust pace. So from an economic and market standpoint, this is very positive. Of course, it's an interim budget, and therefore there can be no tax changes. The only tax change, of course, is that all the exemptions that expire at the end of March this year are extended for 1 year. But apart from that, no tax changes, which is because this is an interim budget. There is going to be much more to come in July.
Yeah, I would like to add a couple of points. See, fiscal prudence has been the path they are taking, and that's the right approach. Otherwise, it's an interim budget. I think they have been clear that there will be no populism. That is a very important point, because the moment you start hovering on taking seats and doing populism, you're going to leak a lot of money. There has been prudence on that ground, and continuously, be it 2019 or this year, we have seen the same direction where you do not take populism. That's a very good stuff, and I think that this fiscal prudence and the control of inflation, with which RBI is doing a wonderful job, will actually put us on the economic highway at a speed which will be unmatched in the globe. So positive for the markets, not much for the taxpayers, no relief because it's an interim budget. But again, remember, no bad news is great good news. That's my take. And one more point to add, just before I forget, one more point to add.
I found a very refreshing. Yeah, please.
Yeah, one more point I want to add is that the thrust on tourism on Lakshadweep was a political, whatever message you call it, it was there.
I liked it. Yeah, I liked it. Abhishek.
Arnab, so of course the economic analysis would come from the experts. Political messaging, social justice, saturation coverage, triple talaq, women in workforce, women's reservation. And remember, Arnab, BJP is strong in north and west, the focus on east and south. So the finance minister said in so many words, Eastern India is going to be the engine of growth. And she mentioned Pragananda as the power of youth, focusing on south. I think the message is clear. South and east is the focus now, west and north having taken care of. And of course, the women power, Nari Shakti, with all the things I mentioned, women's share increasing in Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, both urban and rural, triple talaq mentioned, women in workforce. She also mentioned that women are part of Waqf now, which means she's focusing on the women from minority community also. So I think that's my political message coming out of the budget.
Absolutely. I want, before I go to Sandeep, I want to go back to Piruz, who said, Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, Sabka Sop. He hasn't got a single sop today, but I'd like to get his take on the way things have panned out, because Piruz, the government has given its clear statement of intention. A, fiscal deficit is very well controlled, and they are talking about people-centric inclusive development. You know, of course, so you must have seen the speech for the last 1 hour. What's your single takeaway? Can't hear. I'm not
To
getting-
even not
I'm
have
getting
your
the
bad
audio.
news.
Are
So bad news not hearing is also good news.
You're back. You're back. No, you're
Hello.
back, you're right. Yeah,
Your
please.
audio नहीं आ रहा है.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Yeah, the audio on,
so
audio on,
sometimes
continue.
no bad news is also good news, Arnab.
Yeah.
So sometimes even no bad news is good news, and I think that there is no change in the tax structure is very good, because what I didn't want is that we should not what I call tax the rich and get to the poor. So I think that has not happened. Everything is same. Now coming to the good positive parts of the budget, I think the whole idea of infrastructure spending in rural areas, which is my industry, agri, dairy, fisheries, and I think if they also put a lot of pressure, a lot of things on infrastructure, food processing, branding, I think this is very good, because if India's manufacturing economy has to grow, even agriculture processing, dairy processing, food processing has to grow. So these are, I think, very positive announcements. As regards what I was saying earlier on ensuring a level playing field between taxes, I'm sure this will be done at a later stage in later budgets. But more importantly, there needs to be more tax reforms, and I'm very happy that they have started with at least one tax reform, that whatever disputed amounts are there, up to 25,000 rupees of past, they are ready to waive off. And I think that is a good thing, because it will ensure that the litigation decreases. There is no point of litigating for smaller amounts like 25,000 and 50,000. Also, they have linked at the state level, they have linked money with reforms. So a lot of state governments are going slow on reforms. So I think when you give them finance and you link it to reforms, that is a very positive move. And also the sunset clause for a lot of startups and IFCI account holders and all have been extended. And I think that is exactly what I was saying, that you need to support the startup ecosystem. So to that extent, by extending those tax breaks to a little bit later date, I am sure it will help startups. So I think on a positive note, it is quite positive. It is not impacting anybody's pocket. So that way I am pretty happy. And I do believe that there is room for much more reform, much more tax breaks, but I'm sure more will come in the next budgets.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I think the social welfare stance of the government continues, but at the same time, Sandeep, they are not going in for more support. The government is saying very clearly, we will have the Lakpati Didi scheme, we will have 1 crore houses getting 300 units each, we will have free ration for 80 crore Indians, hereby indicating that this level of support will continue, but not further than that. The government is also looking at creating a culture of self-sufficiency. But what I found very, very refreshing, and is this clarity that we are not going to try and look for this artificial symbolism, 200 crores for women vote bank. Look at Chidambaram's budget, 1,000 crore for women, all over the women. Some money for youth, some money for a scheduled caste vote bank, some money for army personnel. So it was more seeking the pink paper's headline than really doing fundamental work. This is not the sops and grants interim budget, and that's what I like about it.
Absolutely, Arnab. This is something I think the opposition misses. When they try to target women through swaps. But women today are looking for something aspirational, especially the younger ones. They're not interested in sops. They want to see their future. And therefore, encouraging this small micro entrepreneurship, what you're talking of Lakpati Didis and everything else, I think that is what gives them that hope, that aspiration with this government. And I think that is what I see 3 very sustained emphasis of the government. One is to encourage small and micro enterprises, entrepreneurship rather than enterprises, so that people become self-employed. As he says, job givers than job seekers. That is the only way to really multiply. Secondly, on sustained emphasis of Narendra Modi on increasing the efficiency of the economy. Earlier, he has tried to do through taxation, through GST and DBT, etc. But now his emphasis on Gati Shakti. The next, unlocking of value has to come from improving our logistics system. So that is, I think, a very, very enlightened move on there. His dependence on infra continues, and it is both necessary as well as both from a
the market?
national asset creation point of view, as well as infra has the maximum employment intensity. So he has to do that. But all these together, sustained with this women's inclusion, as you are saying, whether through PMAY or other rural infrastructure over there, I think that to me is the more better silver lining than if anybody was expecting SOPs, anybody was expecting that kind of doles.